My name is Dr. Rashmi Halker Singh. I'm the Deputy Editor of Headache. It's my pleasure today to be joined by two of the authors of a recent publication, Dr. Christine Lay and the future Dr. Andrea Portt. The manuscript is titled Migraine and Air Pollution, a Systematic Review. So welcome to both of you. This is a really exciting paper.
Thanks so much for having us. We're really pleased to be here.
So I think there's a lot of conversation and discussion, not only in the headache community, but I think just, at large about air pollution, the weather, and the impact on health. And this is a really interesting paper to all of us at Headache. And I'm just curious, what prompted your interest on this topic and why did you decide to study it?
Yeah, so I think we were also interested in, there's just so much we don't know still about why some people develop migraine and others don't, and why attacks start when they do. And we know that knowing environmental triggers can help. So we want to see if air pollution might be one of those things that we can learn more about.
And I think many patients will tell us that in clinic. It was a bad pollution day, or I got stuck behind a bunch of cars on this long highway drive, and they're very convinced, rightly so, that this is what caused the attack to come on. So I think what Andrea and her team and our PH team looked at was, well, what's the best way to look at this? How can we make a determination if what our patients are talking about in clinic has scientific sort of result behind it or scientific merit behind it?
Yeah, what's been done so far, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, this comes up in my clinic all the time as well. My patients ask me, and they're very curious. They're wondering, they'll bring up, weather impacts their attacks to some way or some degree. They know this, and they want to know what's being done to study this further. So there's always questions that come up. So tell me about your study. What did you do? And also, what did you find?
Right. So we started out just looking as broadly as we can, trying to find every article that's peer-reviewed that looked at quantified air pollution and also quantified migraine outcomes. They could be short-term migraine outcomes, so what day did an attack happen, or long-term, as in who was diagnosed or how many people were diagnosed in an area. So we pulled together as many of those as we could find. We looked at the methods. We reviewed the methods that were used with a instrument that's developed by the World Health Organization for studying studies of air pollution. And then we pulled out the results and tried to not pool them so much because they weren't similar enough to be put together. But just gather the evidence and look at what we know so far.
So what did you find? Were you surprised by anything?
I was surprised because I sort of thought that particulate matter, which was the most studied, would be the most likely to have an association. Or I kind of thought, well, maybe we're shooting in the dark and there's not a consistent result here. So overall, we found for nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, ozone, carbon monoxide, and sulfur dioxide, most of the estimates were above the null value. So most of the estimates suggest an association. However, also most of the confidence intervals include the null value. So there's a little bit less certainty over what the results are in total. And we found that the most consistently associated with headache, or with migraine rather, was actually nitrogen dioxide.
And I think there were over 4 million participants in the 12 studies that you narrowed it down to, Andrea. I think so. So pretty decent numbers, Rashmi, I think, were looked at. Yeah.
So if we're to take this data, your study, and take this back to our patients, what can we tell them about air pollution and migraine, and what recommendations can we give them based on your findings?
I mean, I think it's still early days in terms of this is, I mean, we found 12 studies, and they all sort of studied different pollutants under different circumstances and different outcomes. But we are starting to see that air pollution, you know, I think we grew up sort of thinking air pollution is something that affects people who are very old or people who are very young, or who have a heart or lung condition. And now we're starting to see that people with migraine may also be experiencing effects of air pollution.
Right. And I think it validates, which is always so key when you see a patient, right? To be able to say to them, you know what, yeah, we don't understand it fully, but yes, this is something that other patients will tell us about. This is something that we're now beginning to see some emerging scientific evidence around to suggest that pollutants of one source or another are definitely, you know, related to potentially triggering a migraine attack. Or I don't know, Rashmi, what you think? Does it go back to this whole bit about the prodrome and being vulnerable during the prodromal time to a particular pollutant as opposed to it causing the migraine attack? We don't know.
Yeah, I think all of this adds to the complexity of migraine, and for some people it might be part of the prodrome, and other people maybe not. And um, I think it's really exciting that we're finally being able to look into this in a little more detail as well. So what's next for your team?
Thanks.
More studies on this topic?
Yes. So the next thing that we are planning to do is build on this great work that's already being done. So most of the studies, especially for short term, have been looking at large air pollution areas and ER visits as outcomes, which we know can be delayed because you don't want to go to the ER when you have a migraine.
Absolutely.
Right. So we have some newer sources for air pollution estimates that are much smaller scale. And we're going to be using smartphone app records of migraines. So on both ends there, we have a little bit more precision. We're hoping that helps us get a more specific estimate, and also helps us sort of disentangle the different pollutants that are often happening at the same time.
Well, I'm really excited. This comes up in my conversation with my patients like almost every single day. People are very interested to know what's the latest research on migraine and weather and air pollutants, and what can I tell them? What can I tell them about what they can do and what's going on in terms of research? So I'm really excited to hear about what you all are doing. Thank you all
Well,
for talking
thanks.
to me.
Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much.